tricky, but after they did jump the aisle during the Mondale speech, about 100 or so machinists and their friends quietly, politely, and as it turns out in the dark, did walk out behind International Machinist President William Wimpesinger. Their sign said Democrats yes, Carter no, and they emphasized they weren't leaving the party, just Mr. Carter. Incidentally, many wore buttons saying I'll walk with Wimpy, but they had taped over the rest of the message, Democrats for Commoner Harris, not supporting Barry Commoner. Now over to Sandy Vanover.
Lynn, a delegate from Massachusetts, no doubt biased, said, looking at the balloons and how they failed to dump out, said, I hope that's not a omen of what's going to happen in November. It was evident tonight from what the Vice President especially said and Mr. Carter's speech that they are trying to portray Ronald Reagan as a cross between Ebenezer Scrooge and the Mad Bomber. That may be fine for this audience tonight, and they ate it up like red meat. But my guess is it's not going to wash against Mr. Reagan when the campaign starts. Britt?
Sandy, I'm over in the Georgia delegation where there is nothing like the delirium that took over here in 1976 the first time around for Jimmy Carter, but the delegates do look pleased. They have watched this whole business with the balloons and the difficulty in getting them launched with a certain strange fascination. Nevertheless, they are indeed seem to be satisfied that Jimmy Carter has in fact won, and they are gentlemen.
Yes, thank you very much, all of you there on the floor. Senator Kennedy is on his way, and we'll have that when he arrives. We'll have more after this word from your local stations.
Saturday.
This is the Kennedy motorcade as you see it moving through Times Square in New York and moving along streets that are obviously cleared for it, moving at a pretty good clip. And he should be here very shortly because, of course, Times Square is not very far from the garden itself.
And I think we should point out, Frank, that this convention right now needs him. This demonstration here has kind of fizzled out. And even though the president, his family, the vice president, and his family is still on the podium as the Kennedy motorcade speeds its way toward Madison Square Garden, the demonstration for the president ended, and Robert Strauss now is calling up all the Democratic Party luminaries and bringing them up to the platform. There's Tom Bradley, the mayor of Los Angeles, and the governor of California, Jerry Brown, and the governor of New York, Hugh Carey. They're calling them up in an effort to whip up the crowd. It's not doing it. It has been 12 minutes since President Carter finished his speech, and as you may recall the other day, it was a full half hour of pandemonium here at the Garden after Senator Kennedy finished his.
We might also point out nobody is leaving. Maybe that's because they're waiting for Kennedy or because they can't get out. I don't know. But Strauss has taken over. This Robert Strauss has taken this over as sort of a master of ceremonies.
All right, now, Frank, you remember how we were bragging about how they'd cleared traffic for the Kennedy motorcade? Not anymore. It's stuck in traffic on the other side of Times Square.
We underestimated New York.
They're having a little bit of trouble in getting the senator through here. But you can count on one thing, and that is Bob Strauss will keep things going on that platform until Senator Kennedy gets here.
Yes, I was just going to say that ensures that the demonstration will continue. They've got quite a crowd up there on the platform now. There's former UN Ambassador Andrew Young, you recognize, of course, and the mayor of New York, Ed Koch, who as a candidate for mayor once met the president when he arrived in New York with a statement critical of his policy toward the Middle East. He has since become a very strong Carter supporter, although he's still critical of the administration's policy toward the cities. Senator Kennedy arriving now at the Garden. They made it. He's coming in the same ramp, I believe, that the president did.
Frank, what's happening here is we've been told by some of our reporters that this delay was, in effect, arranged by the White House. They didn't want Senator Kennedy coming immediately after the speech, and so they asked that he remain at his hotel. It apparently has backfired a little bit because I think the assumption was that the president would be able to bask in the glory of the demonstration for several long minutes, and that then following that, Senator Kennedy would come. But the demonstration simply didn't last long enough. But now the senator is on the ramp. He is about to move into Madison Square Garden. There's the senator.
Senator Kennedy. Senator.
It's not likely that he will pause to talk to anybody on his way in. I wonder if he'll say anything at all. If he steps, the microphone will be up there.
I doubt it, Frank.
I doubt it, too.
I don't think this is a night when Senator Kennedy will have anything to say. It is his appearance that they're looking for.
You know, it really is. It just must be recognized. This entire hall, and I guess the country too, almost as though we're waiting for the nominee of the party to arrive. But of course, they're waiting for the challenger, the loser.
Up there, Frank, on that platform, buried among all the Democratic luminaries, is Sam Donaldson. Sam?
Well, yes, I'm sort of leaning over, looking down the stairs, waiting for Senator Kennedy. As you have noted, Bob Strauss will call up every politician he can find, including the county commissioner from Bernalillo County, New Mexico, if necessary, to keep this thing going. This is sort of a reminder of what happened 4 years ago, except then they weren't waiting for anyone. Strauss was just calling every Democrat up that he thought could use a little exposure on television. Clearly, the senators expected any second now because all of the security people have sort of tensed up, and those last-minute scurryings and goings that happen when a VIP is going to come into the area are taking place. I understand they've run out of dignitaries.
Well, they haven't quite, Sam. They just found Secretary of State Muskie. They brought him up. Now they're introducing several members from the Carter cabinet. There's Secretary Brown, Labor Secretary Marshall,
White House counsel.
All right, Ted, I think maybe we're getting some movement here. Again, I can't see anything beyond the stairway. Great anticipation. Too bad you couldn't see the sight. 50 reporters leaning over in all sorts of gangling arms and legs, microphones ready to catch some breathless words such as "How are you?" or whatever he may wish to say or not to say.
Sam, let me interrupt for just a moment because our audience saw a man being helped down the stairway there behind the podium. That is Max Cleland, the administrator of the Veterans Administration, who, of course, was grievously wounded in the Vietnam conflict and is one of the most courageous and admirable people in the country today, in the world.
Senator Kennedy is waiting to go up now. He is standing at the foot of the stairs in a blue suit with his aides, waiting to be introduced, apparently. Talking to them. Takes a moment for Strauss to get the word. He seems to be in fairly good spirits, just judging from his facial expression. Clearly he's going to be brought on with a roar when the moment arrives. An aide is patting down his hair in a last-minute gesture to make certain that one is out of place. Not since Caesar came into the Forum after one of the great battles has there been a scene like this, I suppose. Although I must admit I was not there for the former scene.
Sam, what is the chant? We want Ted?
There he is. Okay, he's been introduced, and there he goes. It's like an angel coming up the ramp.
Just having been introduced to all the members of the Carter family, and now the president is waving to the crowd. And they're shaking hands again.
There it is.
There's the moment.
Well, let's see if we get... There it is. Jerry Brown.
What we are still lacking lacking, Frank, is that classical political photograph of the two men arm in arm, holding their hands up together.
And I think, Ted, we have seen broader smiles on the face of Ted Kennedy. There we are.
If this was meant to be the display of Kennedy's support for Carter, it is slightly underwhelming. The senator being very polite about it, but what is lacking here is any enthusiasm.
Bizarre sight. It really is. Yes, you can see that the podium is more or less being cleared out here. I think they'd like. He's going to leave. I think the idea was that they would clear the podium out so that everybody could get a clear shot of the president and the senator almost alone.
He's not going to give them that moment, Frank.
Well, you know, after all, how can you possibly forget all that went between them? A long campaign. It was a rough campaign, and it was, in some instances, a very personal kind of campaign.
Yeah, but that, after all, Frank, was the whole point.
Yes.
To demonstrate whether they believed it or not, whether they felt it or not, the whole point of his coming here tonight was to give the impression that all of that was behind them.
Well, you have to wonder, you know, if, as you see it. He's back again now.
Again, that clenched
Pat on the
fist.
back. I don't recall that they ever did put their arms or their hands together and raise them in the boxers, the winning boxers salute, or whatever you call it.
No, they never did, and it's going to be, it is still going to be a difficult job for President Carter to bring these Democrats together. Here's the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. with the invocation, or the benediction.
It is a distinct honor for me to recognize the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. of the Ebenezer Baptist Church of Atlanta, who will close these proceedings with benediction. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all earth keep silence before him. Wherever we're walking, God would like to speak to you. This is our Father's word. And all of us are his children. May we now come to a serious moment everywhere. The President of our country, the Vice President of our country have preached tonight, and we gladly accept and follow. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you
peace, now and always. Amen.
Well, that's a surprise in itself. A short benediction by the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. That picture you see, look at the clenched fists. He's no longer inside the hall where the delegates can see him. Ted, I'm bound to say, I think it would be almost have been better from the Carter point of view if he had not come.
It would have been, I think, Frank, because then at least they could have said, well, it was a totally graceless performance. Why didn't he show up? But he did what was required of him. He showed up. They shook hands.
Just barely.
But just barely. You're right. It was the absolute minimum.
Well, they're singing the great civil rights song, We Shall Overcome.
In all the time, my friend. All right, fine, good. The president has just said a few words here and has gone down the stairs, having left the podium. Said it was a good night for him. It was a great night. He felt the party was unified and that he predicted victory in November. And with that, he is gone. Senator Kennedy is gone, and that's about the extent of the podium. Back to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, we saw the president making his way out there. And he said apparently that the party is unified and that he's confident of victory. Let's go back down now to this rapidly clearing floor and our correspondent, Britt Huell.
Frank, I'm standing here in the middle of the New Hampshire delegation where Hamilton Jordan watched all these proceedings, and he paused briefly at one point during that rather awkward delay and picked up the red telephone here undoubtedly to find out what was going on. Mr. Jordan, did everything go according to plan there at the end?
I thought it was a good night for the party and for President Carter and for Senator Kennedy.
Well, what I want to really get at, though, was the question of there seemed to be a rather long and somewhat awkward delay there before Senator Kennedy arrived. Is that what you were on the phone about?
That was fine. Senator Kennedy told us this afternoon that he was going to watch the president's speech at his hotel, and at the end of that speech would come to the convention floor, which is what he did.
So you knew all along that he was coming?
Sure, of course.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jordan. And now over to my colleague, Sander Van Oker. Sandy?
Governor O'Neill of Massachusetts. Governor, you said about 2 hours ago to me.
Bill, I lost the order.
You said the president is a nominee of this party, but Ted Kennedy is now its leader. Do you still think that after the speech?
Well, I said that Ted Kennedy is the spiritual leader of the party, and I think that's true. I think he holds on to the traditions, the heritage, and the basic direction of the Democratic Party. And I must say as well that Jimmy Carter came to Madison Square Garden tonight reaching out for all Democrats to come together. He gave great deference not only to Ted Kennedy, but to the great planks, minority planks, which have been added to the overall Democratic Party platform. And I think now that we can work together, we'll all go out, and I think the common denominator now is to beat Ronald Reagan in November.
Thank you very much. Not a Lynchier.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm here in Pennsylvania, and this is the state that really symbolizes some of the big problems that Jimmy Carter has. All those "We Want Ted" shouts, a lot of them were started right here in this delegation. Yes, indeed, there are Carter supporters. Yes, indeed, they did nominate and vote for the president. But there are still a lot of Kennedy people here. They're already carrying Kennedy 84 signs. Don't forget, the president must carry states like Pennsylvania in order to win in the fall. Last time around, he got Philadelphia by 250,000 votes. This time, it's estimated so far, right now, he wouldn't do nearly that well. That's the kind of thing we have to see. Gentlemen?
Thank you very much, Lynn. In a sense, it's symbolic. Those thousands of red, white, and blue balloons are still stuck up there near the ceiling of Madison Square Garden, and it must have been something of a letdown. Jim Wooten, you've been on the podium throughout the whole evening. How did it seem down there?
Well, as you know, Senator Kennedy is a Boston Irish, which means he comes from a class of people who don't really like to be touched all that much. So once again, we had a problem between the Kennedy people and the Carter people that had to be negotiated. The question was, what would happen up here when the senator got here? Would there be a great warm embrace? Would the two of them hold hands and raise it together in the traditional political signal? Or would there be handshakes and smiles and perhaps a pat on the back, which you saw? That was all you saw. The president's a toucher, and Senator Kennedy was not in a mood to come up here and to wholeheartedly, physically embrace the president. He had down here on the floor some 1,300 delegates who are loyal to him. He did not wish to appear to be all that cordial to Jimmy Carter tonight. He feels he did his duty by the Democratic Party. Now he has from here to Labor Day to figure out what he will do for Jimmy Carter as a campaigner. One speech, two speeches, three speeches, and we'll see just how thickly they've come together tonight here in Madison Square Garden. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Jim. We understand that some of the Carter people on the floor already are saying privately, but not in front of cameras or microphones, that they are not really very happy about what happened here tonight and the whole Kennedy-Carter meeting, which was certainly lukewarm at best. We understand now that Senator Kennedy is on his way to the Sheraton Center, the hotel where President Carter is headquartered. Whether that means there's going to be a meeting between the two men or not, we really can't say at this time. But we'll have more of ABC News coverage of the 1980 Democratic Convention from Madison Square Garden in New York in a moment. Wasn't here tonight, but it was talked about a great deal, and of course is the man the Republicans or the Democrats are counting on to unite them in a common front this fall, is Ronald Reagan, who is on his ranch atop the Santa Ynez Mountains just outside Santa Barbara in California. We contacted that ranch earlier in the evening and invited Governor Reagan to tell us what he thought of what was happening here in Madison Square Garden. I didn't talk with the governor, but I did talk with an associate of his who said that he would decline the invitation because he believed that this, after all, was President Carter's night and it would be wrong to intrude on it. However, the associate of Governor Reagan did say that he thought that what was happening here was really a case of overkill on the part of the Democrats, that they were painting Reagan in such a stark picture that it would not be acceptable to the country as a whole. So that's the reaction from California. Ted?
Thanks very much, Frank. Indeed, the question of the night seems to be, was this Jimmy Carter's night? And with us now are three of our political sages. I'm going to call them in now. Joseph Kraft, syndicated columnist, another syndicated columnist, George Will, and our old friend from the Boston Globe, Marty Nolan. Marty, it's your town. Let's start with you, Boston. What did Kennedy do today? I mean, did he help Carter, or did he ultimately hurt him?
Well, no one said, Ted, that the return of the prodigal son had to be enthusiastic, did it? And I was watching the television along with everyone else. I was wondering if that motorcade was ever going to get there. I thought I was watching Kojak. You know, Kennedy provided the drama by dragging his feet, and boy, did he drag his feet. I thought he was Sidney Carton going up to the guillotine, you know, far, far better thing that I do than I've ever done. Did he upstage Carter, or did Carter upstage him? That's the question we're going to be talking about for a long time to come.
Well, that is the question of the night. George Will, what do you think?
Well, I think it every once in a while doesn't hurt to just blurt out the obvious, which is those two gentlemen don't like each other at a very personal level. And you have to really work to keep your face frozen in that, not a frown, but certainly far from a smile, as Kennedy did. This hurt.
All right, let's forget about the body language up there for a moment. Joe Kraft, I'd like to talk to you about the future of the Democratic Party. Can it be reunited after what we have seen here today? As we just heard before, the younger Mr. O'Neill was suggesting that Ted Kennedy is now the spiritual leader of that party. That's a very difficult thing when the president, theoretically, is leading it heart, body, spirit, and soul.
Ted, it seems to me that up until the finale, this convention had come out as well for President Carter as he could possibly have expected. He'd hurdled most of the problems on the platform. He had gotten agreement from Senator Kennedy. I'm sorry, it's a bad slip, I guess, to come to the podium. I think things were set for the beginning of unity, but the speech, it seems to me, I think fell very, very flat. There was that crazy fluff about Hubert Horatio Hornblower. It did seem to me that the timing was slightly off. I don't know if Senator Kennedy was dragging his feet. My feeling was that they'd expected a better demonstration and didn't get it. So I have the sense that while I don't want to emphasize too much what was in the immediate past, while we have a long future ahead, I think the last few minutes were upset with what could have been quite a good takeoff for President Carter.
Gentlemen, let me, if I may, try out an observation on you. It seemed to me that Ronald Reagan, rather than speaking to the delegates in Detroit, was speaking to the television audience, to the millions of people watching in. Whereas Jimmy Carter, rather than speaking to the millions, was speaking to the delegates here at Madison Square Garden. And perhaps the speech came off on television looking a little bit too shrill. George Will, what do you think?
I agree. I believe what the Reagan response to this would be, first, Mr. President, don't shout. Wisdom isn't located in the lungs. Let's calm down. Who's looking like an extremist? Then he'd say, your 2 points are inflation and arms control. You say you've been willing to tackle inflation. We don't mind you tackling it, just don't triple it as you did. On arms control, they would say, fine, we're all for sane arms control, but you're the one who negotiated an arms control treaty that you could not get through a heavily Democratic Senate, and many of the leaders of the opposition to it, Hollings, Nunn, Boren, Cannon, etc., are Democrats. So I just don't think it wounded.
All right, Marty Nolan, let's focus for a moment on what at least I think was the intended theme of President Carter's speech, and that is that the common enemy is Ronald Reagan. Can the Democratic Party unify behind it, or perhaps can the Democratic Party?
In the fall campaign, you do have a tough fight.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think there's any question about it that it's going to help bring the party together. We started out at a kind of a low ebb. I guess you might say we were going into the third quarter about 6 to 13 points behind. And we're still a little bit behind. We got a little catching up to do, but I think we've begun to make some first downs, and maybe we'll cross that goal line pretty soon. I think we have a good fighting chance.
Good fighting chance doesn't sound that hopeful. There are a lot of members of the House that are concerned that perhaps that Jim Wright, the House Majority Leader, may become Jim Wright, the House Minority Leader. A lot of people are concerned with the re-election chances.
I think we will retain the majority. I fully expect that we're going to lose some seats. Let me be just honest with you about it. It'd be, a jazzy thing for me to stand here and say, oh, no, we're going to gain seats. But I don't believe that's in the cards. I think we probably stand to lose a few seats on the Democratic side. How many of you?
Can I interrupt? How many of you?
Oh, well, I'd call 10, 15 a few. 20 would be several. 25 would be a good many. 30 would be almost too many. 60 would be disastrous.
You're talking about 25, you're worried about.
Yeah, I think 25 or less. We might surprise ourselves and win a few seats. Who
Congressman
knows?
Jim Wright of Texas, the House Majority Leader. This is Jessica Savage on the podium to John Chancellor.
Yes, and from the podium to the balcony, David Brinkley is out there with Teddy White. David?
Thank you, John. Teddy? Madison Square Garden started life in the 19th century in another building, and it was then known as Phineas T. Barnum's Monster Classical and Geological Hippodrome. I would say it has not changed a great deal.
No, it hasn't. The music sounds the same. The colors are brighter. But about the only thing that remains the same, though, in politics is the fact that the Democrats still play Happy Days Are Here Again. That's the only connection with the old Democratic conventions of 20 or 30 years ago.
Back to Roosevelt. Teddy, what did you think of Mr. Carter's speech?
I'm rather... It was a speech of a proud and stubborn man. There are several kinds of speeches on occasions like this. There's the passionate speech, as we heard from Teddy a few days ago. This was the let's talk sense to the American people speech. He described the two choices that lay before them. It was as if he were talking to the party and not to the people out there. The two choices being the fantasy world of Ronald Reagan with, I think he listed them as surrender, risk, and despair. And then there was the real world the real choices. He kept using that word, hard choices. Mainly, I thought, I caught there was a biblical cadence at the beginning of it. That ministerial rhythm, the invocation of the phrases of the Bible, which is very effective and moving. But there was also this underlying melancholy tone of his, and he didn't get really wound up to give the Republicans what he thinks they should get until towards the end of the speech when he got political. I had expected more fire, but evidently he presented himself as a man proud of his record, about to defend his record, left out certain things that rather perplexed me. He left out the cities from his, which is part of the Democratic chant. Didn't talk much about inflation, which is the nation's biggest problem.
Very little good to say about it.
Well, he did talk about the energy program, which I think is a definite Carter success. He talked about his peacekeeping, both in the Middle East, left out China for some reason, talked about the nuclear arms race, the SALT agreement, and on there he picked up cheers, a great many cheers on the nuclear race. Picked up, again, the loudest cheers he got were domestic when he said we are going to wipe out discrimination of everybody. It was sober, brave. I wouldn't list it among the most eloquent speeches I've heard, but certainly among the most straightforward, hard-hitting, clear.
What about Senator Kennedy's appearance on the platform? What was your judgment of that?
Well, that's a very difficult one to measure. He appeared on the platform for the minimum amount of time that courtesy required, the minimum bows and graces. I don't think it was on that platform more than 3 minutes. And then I shall always remember, and we'll see again, that seigneurial flip of his hand, as if he were throwing a tip to the coachman as he walked away. It was the Grand Lord consorting for a moment with the dukes and the barons, and then disappearing off stage. Last to come, first to leave.
A seigneurial wave.
Seigneurial. Or as we politicians say, it was a quick drop-by.
All right, Teddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you at the next convention, and in the meantime.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be back in a moment.
We heard today that the Republicans were responsible for steadily cutting real defense by more than 1/3. Well, it's not true in the first place, but if it were true, the Democrats would certainly share that responsibility. We are told that Republicans have now promised to launch an all-out nuclear arms race. It simply is not true. And this comes from the leadership that would never lie to us.
Was Carter's speech a good speech?
It was a dreadful speech. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I would like to be charitable. I intend to be charitable. I don't think that Carter was up tonight. His speech was flat. He hurried his lines. He fumbled over the name of Hubert Horatio Hornblower. He just had a terrible time in delivery. It was just a bad speech. He's done better.
I saw something very interesting tonight, Walter, and it's the first time I've ever seen it at any convention. You can't look at the acceptance speech in and of itself. You have to look at the film that preceded it. Martin Luther King Sr. said that the president preached tonight. The president didn't preach tonight. The president read the liturgy, the traditional Democratic liturgy, something for the workers, something for business, something for the family farmer, something for women, something for children. The sermon came in the film. It evoked nostalgia for America the Beautiful. It very, very cleverly identified Jimmy Carter with Thomas Jefferson and Woodrow Wilson. And it made you feel good about yourself and therefore indirectly about the president. And what you saw in that film and in that speech is the strategy the Democrats are going to use in November. They're not going to let the president loose. They're going to retail Democratic policies to all these constituents groups, and then through television, they're going to try to make you feel good about Jimmy Carter, the country, yourself, and bad about Reagan. This campaign is not going to be Carter versus Reagan. It's going to be Jerry Rafshoon, Carter's TV advisor, versus Ronald Reagan.
But I still maintain, and I come out of the media age and did it, that a speech and the words of the president are what count still.
This was, we got to send it back, all right.
All right,
I give up. Last thoughts.
Thank you, Walter.
Jack, I hate to deny you a last thought. In fact, I'm gonna take the liberty of saying, what's your last thought, Jack?
Maybe the symbology of those poor balloons still stuck up there on the ceiling, Walter. I suppose the cartoonists will have great fun with it, but perhaps the viewing audience can't see it as we can in the hall, but this enormous bubble of balloons was supposed to descend gloriously and it's still stuck.
A lot of advancement are going to be looking for work tomorrow, I think, Walter.
I think so, too. And Jack, and Jeff, and Bill, thank you so very much for being with us for these two conventions. You've added so much to our coverage, so much depth and understanding. Your combined wisdom is formidable. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we're all, I'm glad to be able to count you among my friends. CBS News coverage of the Democratic National Convention will continue in a moment.
And just broke the estimated highway mileage record. This amazing 210 goes farther on one tank of gas than any other car you can buy. The Datsun 210. Just fill it and forget it.
Wow! It's a long way to empty. In a Datsun, we are drilling a long way.
WMAQ-TV, Chicago.
John, the Dump Carter movement that began growing up a month or so ago was one of the great failures of 1980. They didn't move him a quarter of an inch.
Nor a quarter of a delegate vote?
Right. Carter will campaign now with great energy. We are positive. When you get down beyond the rhetorical level, who, after all, would be eager to leave the White House in private jets and all of that, go back to Plains, Georgia, to Brother Billy's legal problems, and a peanut warehouse that is losing money? Should we go down to the floor?
No, I have one little observation I want to make before we get away. And that is something that was, I didn't think this up. I wish I had, because I think it's clever and interesting. Somebody else did. One of the Kennedy people the other day was talking about the fact that Senator Kennedy started last year, when politics, the tempo of politics began to heat up, by saying, I expect the president to be renominated and I expect to support him. And he leaves New York tonight. The president has been renominated, and I guess he's going to support him.
That was Teddy last year.
That was his position last year, word for word, and that's where he is now. How about the Fearless Four? Chris Wallace.
John, I kept thinking back tonight to Jimmy Carter's Democratic Convention 4 years ago. I was on the floor that night, and I remember that when he came to this convention, he walked across the floor, shaking the hands of the delegates, and walked up to the podium and said the line he'd said during the whole campaign, I'm Jimmy Carter and I'm running for president. Tonight was so very different. The hall was dark, the single spotlight, they played Hail to the Chief, the flags were lit up, and he came out. And it seemed to me it was an important difference, that what Jimmy Carter was selling tonight was the fact that he is president, that he is a known quantity, and that seemed to be what they were staking their campaign on tonight, that Ronald Reagan is unknown, and that better stick with Jimmy than risk Ronald Reagan.
Well, not so much that Reagan is an unknown, as that he's a simpleton in their view, which I think they will find is not exactly correct. I thought it was kind of a strange plastic evening. I agree with you in the comparison between now and last time. When the most interesting line in a speech is, quote, Ted, I need you, then it's not a very interesting speech. And when he runs for re-election as if he had flunked his first term and is going back now for the second term because he now has the experience gained from the first term's failures, well, that's almost impossible to digest and analyze. I'll try it tomorrow morning.
You will indeed on the Today program. That's my single plug for the evening. It's really the politics of second chance that Jimmy Carter is talking about, plus this issue of Ronald Reagan, which we have also been talking about. It is what is known about Ronald Reagan that they want to emphasize, and they'll be doing it in that kind of film that we saw from Jerry Rafshoon tonight. This is a humble man in difficult times, and he's bound to make mistakes, but after all, he's better than Ronald Reagan. What is that quote from today's Wall Street Journal? 4 years ago, it was why not the best. This time they're saying at least he's not the worst. Some of the people that are saying as well. I thought the whole thing was quite an awkward evening. It was not as triumphant as I had anticipated it might be, because this is one of the best political organizations I have seen in terms of running a campaign. That is the Jody Powell Hamilton Jordan thing, as they have demonstrated in the course of this last year. I would have thought that tonight would have been orchestrated much better than it was. Ted Kennedy up there. Well, if there is a political equivalent of a shotgun wedding, I thought that that was it. I mean, he was as reluctant as anybody I've seen scampering across that stage or being dragged across it. I don't know how you read body language, but it did not seem to be to be the most enthusiastic performance on the part of the man who loves situations like this, as Ted Kennedy does. And when he wants to turn it on, the afterburners really click in, as he did for George McGovern 4 years ago. He was up, just had that crowd on his feet. Tonight, that was not the case. That may change. There are, as we say, weeks to go yet.
Lest we forget, some time ago, President Carter was saying more or less that he'd whipped Teddy Kennedy's behind, and this week he has whipped Ted Kennedy's behind, politically speaking, and yet Kennedy has survived as a strange and potent political force within the Democratic Party. We've been talking all week about unity. Could they achieve unity here? I think that, you may disagree, but I think that the convention ends and Democrats leave Madison Square Garden, go back home with perhaps the minimum amount of unity to avoid social embarrassment. And that's really not very much, not as much as Jimmy Carter certainly had hoped for. The election day, I believe, is only 81 days away from tonight. That's not very much time. And there's no evidence from the Kennedy people that they're going to work enthusiastically or energetically for the Carter campaign. Tonight, when the president was speaking from the podium, I was over on the opposite side of the floor with the Pennsylvania delegation. Very large delegation split between Carter and Kennedy people. And the Carter people were applauding during the demonstration. The Kennedy people once or twice, and that was it. Then when Ted Kennedy appeared on the podium, they just let loose, and we heard the roar in the crowd. It was a louder roar than President Carter got.
Biggest hand of the night.
Biggest hand of the night. Now, we know that there are more Carter delegates than there are Kennedy delegates. We know the Carter organization filled this hall. There are many more Carter people than Kennedy people, yet the roar was there. And some Carter people were applauding, yes, because Teddy was there and it was a sign of a party unity. But I'm saying there was a certain amount of enthusiasm for Kennedy, which does not exist for Carter. And that, I think, is the bottom line. And that, I think, is what President Carter has to worry about.
Isn't it possible for us, though, to be so jaded about a political party and a campaign from these 4 days that we might be missing something?
It's certainly possible.
Yes, that we might be missing the fact that there is a contest to come, and this is merely an exercise before then. And while everyone here does not go home having won the brass ring, they at least go home.
Now, do not underestimate the ability of Jimmy Carter to campaign.
That's right.
A lot of people have said he does better than govern, of course. The fact is that he is the incumbent president with all that that has to bear on turning on the spigot in the parts of the country where he needs to and wants to.
Tom, can I just get a word in there?
Well, I'm not sure, John.
It seems to me that we'll never see you again.
I said I'm not sure, now I am sure. Yes, go ahead.
It seems to me that we should not judge too much by what Democrats do in a hall in New York and draw from that large conclusions what millions of Democrats across the country in 50 states will do as this campaign gets down the road. It is very easy for all of us here to be swept up in the dynamics of a convention. And this was a very interesting convention in many ways, and I don't disagree with a thing you guys said.
What dynamics are you talking about?
I'm talking about the dynamics of the election moving out here after Labor Day, after the World Series. And this thing could end up being very, very close, united, disunited, whatever you want to call the Democrats.
Exactly. The convention itself was not the most exciting convention. It had very, very interesting moments and is, in a way, an historical watershed in the parting of the FDR economics from Jimmy Carter economics and those things. But I think your point is correct. We should evaluate the campaign and not so much the convention, which leaves in the debris of Madison Square Garden a lot of old ideas and hardly any new ones.
John, one point that I would make, though, I talked to John Sears shortly before the Republican convention, and he told me about what he calls the open window theory of politics. And he says that there are only a few times in the course of a campaign when the voters open their windows and are really paying attention to the politicians. When the candidate announces, during the national convention, and in the closing days of the campaign. You're absolutely right. A major gap by Reagan between now and November. The dynamics of the campaign in the final days could change this all around. The point, at least for me, is that Jimmy Carter tonight in the acceptance speech, with quite a lot of attention being brought to bear, seemed to miss an opportunity to give the American people more of an idea of where he wanted to go and more of a reason to support him for president.
And as we were crisscrossing this convention floor tonight, John, we were not just talking with the delegates here as well. We were talking with the governors of states about the problems in the West, as you'll remember, and the problems in the various parts of the industrial Northeast and so on, about the real problems that he has there. So it does go outside here, but you're absolutely right. In American politics, it was a year ago this month in August when it looked like All Ted Kennedy had to do was raise his finger, and Jimmy Carter would collapse, and the nomination would be his. I'd like to say one final thing. John and David both, I did tell these guys that the blue suit was the uniform of the day down here on the floor, and I don't know what happened.
Well, you didn't bring our suits. That's what didn't happen.
No, he just brought the pants. Thank you. I want to thank all of you people down on the floor and the producers who worked with you. And I thought you did. David, I know, joins me. We thought you just did a wonderful job. I think David might give you a senioral wave from the.
Oh, really?
From the
No, that's what. I don't know if you could hear it. That's what Teddy White was saying Kennedy did to Carter on the stage. A seniorial wave to a passerby who was given a brief and fleeting recognition. No, I want to say that I think you four have been terrific, the best by far, as always.
And that leads us to something else that we want to say, and that is that for those of you who have followed us in this coverage, David and I were talking last night, going back, about the fact that all this equipment works. All of these thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures that you see and different sorts of images, and well, it all just worked marvelously. And we are, all of us, so terribly grateful to the people who, in this studio and all over New York.
I wish they could turn the cameras around and see the people behind them, because without them, we could just as easily have stayed home.
Anyway,
they have made it all work beautifully.
We are going to be showing you their names in a minute or so, and we urge you to look at that. It gives you an idea of what the size of this enterprise, and David and I and the floor.
Today, I talked with some of the Carter delegates who said that they're the ones who have the right to be embittered about this entire campaign.